So today's episode is about introverts. Ooh. Are you an introvert, you?
I am. Who would have thought, right?
You're listening to...
Jom Sembang, Malaysia.
Why do you say you are an introvert?
Because a lot of people think that introverts are people who are quiet as opposed to extroverts who are people who are always the life of a party, which is true but not entirely true.
Okay.
Okay, so how I define introverts and extroverts is extroverts actually gather energy from being with a lot of people, from a lot of noise. Like
Okay.
when they're at a party, they get energized. Introverts get energized when it's quiet, when they're introspective. Maybe that's the word where introvert comes from.
Interesting.
Lah.
But I do think that some gathering that I'm at and we have introspective conversation, then I suddenly feel quite at home. One.
Correct, because it's introspective. It's not just rah rah, it's like a lot of hype. But there's no, how to say, it's party, but there's no, it doesn't add to the wellness of your deep soul, See, obviously I'm an introvert, right?
Right. Okay. Anyway, I was just thinking about this topic because Chinese New Year is like, the most stressful thing about Chinese New Year for me is all the gatherings that I have to go to.
I agree. I don't go for many gatherings, but okay, my cousin's gonna kill me for saying this. I don't think I've ever told her before, but the first day of Chinese New Year is so stressful that I'm stressing about it the day before.
Oh, you're stressing about
actually,
the day before, huh? I
Yeah.
stress like 1 week
I'm always
or a few days before. I think I'm not anti-gathering because I kind of enjoy gathering if I don't have to be actively participating in it. If that makes any sense. Like for example, like Chinese New Year is like a force on you gathering, especially if you just need to be at home when the visitors come. Or not even visitors lah. For my family, right, first day no visitor, already like 40 of us from the clan,
Okay.
So tidak kira lah. But even that itself is stressful.
Okay, for me it's the other way around. Just now you said something about if you're not actively participating in it, then you're okay. I'm the other way around. So, okay, if I'm in a gathering where I'm actively participating,
And
then I'm okay. So if I'm engaged with the people or even one person,
okay lah, you can be a social extrovert lah.
no, social introvert.
Okay, that's so confusing.
No,
But
no,
actually,
but let me
what
explain
I
it.
really mean is, for example, like there's a gathering and people having a conversation. I'm perfectly fine not being active in the conversation, but just
Okay.
sitting down there or listening. But a lot of the people who are in the conversation wouldn't know what to do with me. So they are more uncomfortable than me. So in order to tackle their discomfort, they try very hard to make me comfortable, which then ends up nobody's comfortable.
I see what you mean. Okay, let me tell you about the most uncomfortable situation that I've ever been in, period,
Okay.
right? I was at this dinner. It was somebody's, I can't remember what, who, where. And we were at a table where I didn't know the people around me, which quite happens quite normally.
Like
But
the
in
table
this-
of 10 lah.
A table of 10. But it was just like, it was super awkward because I didn't know how to engage with it. And I kind of felt uncomfortable because I felt antisocial. But it wasn't like
Okay.
I wanted to be antisocial, but it was just like, oh, when is this event going to finish? And then after that, right, I learned a trick.
Okay.
Remember just now I said, if I'm actively engaged, then it's okay. So somebody told me after that, there are certain things that people have in common one. Maybe not everybody lah, but most people would have in common.
Like the universal topic.
Yeah, even that is not foolproof, but sometimes it is travel.
Okay.
You know how when you suddenly talk about a place that you visited or a place that you like, you kind of, I kind of light up and I
Okay.
talk about, hey, oh yeah, I was there. No, there's things to talk about. So it's like you can find topics lah that kind of help lah, rather than just, oh man, like what's happening.
But finding the topic itself is hard. I don't know. It's like quite weird to study like, hey, let's talk about travel lah. Like, or let's talk about. I find if I think too hard about it, it's very hard.
Yeah, that's true. That is
So
true.
what I really like is instead of trying to find a common ground,
Okay.
I prefer to, if I have to start a conversation just to so that people don't feel awkward, even though I'm perfectly fine sitting down there, I will probably start with something that I'm passionate about. Like I start talking about myself just to break the ice and go like, oh, people say, oh, she's a writer. Then they'll find topics that they think can gel lah.
I see.
So I find that easier for me instead of like, let's take the dice and throw. Okay lah, let's ask this girl lah. So do you travel a lot? Like after she answer like no, then a bit like, you know, especially if it's strangers. So I find it like, oh, by the way, you know, I'm a writer, I travel a lot, have you been to where? And then I will start at least like a 3 minutes warm them up, and then when they start talking, I'm like, okay, job done.
Okay, remember we said in the first episode that we're total opposites, right? I absolutely don't like telling people what I do. Because the next question is, oh, you're a singer ah? Where do you sing? How do you answer this question? It's like, oh, then I have to explain, you know, it's like having to explain. It's like, I rather you don't know what I do lah.
Something like that. But I think number one, most introverts were like, it takes a lot of effort to just start a conversation or be in a conversation unless it's something we're passionate about.
That is correct. Because then you can go meaningfully into something. So I don't like talking about the weather. Nowadays, I suppose, if you talk a little bit about politics, it's a little bit interesting because there are things happening that are kind of interesting. True. But also people can go into like one tangent and then like, okay lah, you know, like, okay, enough already. I've had enough of this topic. But sports, I suppose, like
now football, yes.
Football, badminton, hockey, right now is a hot topic. Yeah, or Chinese New Year.
I don't know. So
food.
Chinese New Year for
gosh,
me
food.
is food, yes.
Yeah.
So if like when all things fail, pick up a cookie jar and say, hey, would you like to try this? It's like one of the survival way lah. But like some of the other ways I survive in a gathering that is stuck in the house or whatever, right, is to busy myself. So for example, like if you go for a house gathering, they'll be like, oh, come, let me get the food for you, I get the drink for you, even though it's not my house, it's fine, because why? And when I have something to do, then people don't feel uncomfortable.
Yes.
So it's making both parties not uncomfortable lah.
Okay.
Yeah. So even though sometimes the host will be like, yeah, but then you are a guest, you shouldn't do this. Then I'm like, it will be even worse if I'm not doing this.
Yeah. Or help with the washing or the serving lah.
The washing is the best thing. Why? You get to hide in the kitchen, that you really don't have to interact with anyone. I think some other things that I used to do when I was much younger is like, I'll go and play with the kids.
Okay.
So I'm busy entertaining the kids.
Okay,
So
I let the kids entertain me. If you just sit down and watch, it's a lot easier than, yeah. You know, when there's kids in the room, right?
Yeah.
Time passes a lot faster lah.
yeah. And sometimes our Chinese New Year guests bring their pets.
Really?
Like
No.
a hamster or the
okay,
dog.
okay. The dog.
Yeah, they haven't brought dog before. So I will keep myself occupied with that. I think the whole idea is not that it's not being antisocial, it's just trying to be comfortable. Some people, when they see you're occupied, then they get comfortable. So my idea is to make people comfortable by saying, hey, I'm fine, I'm doing something. Even though I can perfectly sit at one corner and don't do anything, but it just makes everyone uncomfortable.
Yeah,
Coping mechanism.
that is true lah. So this Chinese New Year was my first, well, obviously I think for most people, first one
Fully back to
back
proper
to
Chinese New Year
correct.
after the
And
pandemic.
I think my thing was I am going to be comfortable about not being engaged. Rather than feeling awkward lah. I think for the longest time for me it was, especially if I'm in foreign territory lah,
Okay.
You know, if it's my house, it's my friend's house, okay. But if I'm like, because I'm in Singapore, I'm in other people's friends, other people's relatives, which are kind of related to me, related also lah. I mean, they'll be upset if I say not related, but somehow, you know, for the longest time I didn't feel like I belonged, you know. So I suppose actually it also starts with your own mental it's like if you feel uncomfortable, then it just kind of like everybody is also going to be uncomfortable lah. So but if we like go in with a, you know, comfortable feeling, then other people also going to be okay lah, I suppose.
kind of agree to that. I mean, sometimes I find myself is more of like I'm comfortable but everyone is not comfortable just because I'm quiet. So there is that lah. So yeah lah. So maybe it's time to disengage and check out our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by CMate Communications. CMate Communications has been providing all the design needs for our podcast, including the promo materials, the artwork for each episode, as well as the key art that you see for Jom Sembang, Malaysia. If you require such services, please look up CMate Communications, CMATE Communications on Facebook, and you will find someone who will be able to help you with all that you need on your social media. So, back to introverts. There's one thing that I always feel like if I ever have a chance to tell anyone, like in a gathering or something, it's like, can you do this, or don't do this, so that I can comfortably be in the gathering lah. So I think what I wanted to say is, what are some of the things that you wish other people do for you as an introvert to make you comfortable?
I know one thing that Gina doesn't like to do at parties.
Which is?
Icebreakers.
Yes, I hate icebreakers. If icebreaker ever have to happen, you'll find me hiding in the toilet.
Okay, tell us why.
Because it is so much interaction with a stranger, and I don't know. Number one, maybe because I don't like games. So
Okay.
most icebreakers are games. So that itself is stressful, and then plus the getting to know each other in the game is like double stress in trigger. So that doesn't work for me lah, at least lah. But it also depends on what's the icebreaker lah.
True. I find that I'm not so terrified of icebreakers. So I suppose there's different levels and types of introversion as well lah, kan?
Something like that lah.
Okay, so what's another tip?
Second thing I don't like people to do is trying very hard to get you into their conversation.
Into their conversation.
Correct. It's like they don't like seeing you sitting down there like being a listener or something like that. Even though you're not interrupting to them, it's like they don't know what to do you. So they try very hard to bring you into conversation. But in the first place, you might not want to be in a conversation, number one. Number two, you don't mind just sitting down there listening. So I find that if you really want to get an introvert or like me to talk in a party or whatever, right, it has to be first like something that I'm interested in lah. And not something like you guys are interested in, and I have to find my way in. Like you're like, walao eh, what is
Like
this?
if you're talking about football and then you're expected to join the
Yeah, I
conversation.
cannot. So I don't mind listening, but I cannot be forced to it lah. So when people try too hard, I get very uncomfortable, and then becomes both party uncomfortable.
Okay, so two questions, right, arising from that. Number one, how do people know whether we are comfortable or not in the first place?
I think this one based a lot on your background as a person lah. Number one is if you understand what it means to just sit alone. Oh, she looks comfortable, fine, then don't touch her lah. Okay, but if she looks like she's bored and like, don't know what to do herself, then go and talk to her lah. So I think if you notice someone is comfortable, just let them be. Don't try so hard to bring them
So
out.
what does comfortable look like?
Like they don't look like they're bored or looking at their phones, or they're in the conversation but they're not talking.
Okay, so they're actively listening?
But not talking.
Okay. So I suppose you can see from their eyes and body language whether they're actually listening lah. And if they're listening, that's cool lah. If they're not saying anything, that's totally fine as well, right?
Correct.
Okay, so then the second question is, how would somebody know what interests you?
Like I say, it doesn't normally try that hard. So I have this cousin, a long distance cousin. We only meet once a year and stuff like that. So as I was going through Chinese New Year every year growing up, she was probably the only person who intentionally comes and talks to me. So initially it was a bit weird, but then when she found out that, oh, I like writing, I like reading. So after that, every Chinese New Year she comes, if she ever has to talk to me, it's about the kind of topic like, hey, what was the latest book you read, or stuff like that. So immediately there is that how to say it, that engagement lah. That okay, this topic I can talk. But if you come and then suddenly talk about don't know what, then I'll be like struggling very hard to like, okay, finding my foot in this thing lah.
Okay, so taking the time to kind of to find out lah, to hear about you lah. So it's a one-on-one conversation rather than a few people talking about something and expecting us to fit in.
Something like
Correct?
that.
So okay, that actually makes sense because I remember one Chinese New Year, okay, maybe a few lah, where I found it like, hey, this year was okay. And it was because I actually had a meaningful conversation with somebody, and it just so happened that it was a topic that both of us
Passionate about?
resonated with.
Okay.
You know, yeah, and I think for me the keyword is meaningful conversation lah. So
Well-
if you tell me about somebody I don't know, or it's just okay, let's not call it gossip, but that's if you're talking about somebody else, that's gossip, right?
They just fly over the head lah.
Then it's like it's not only not engaging, but it's also quite tiring actually, because then you have to like, okay, this happened recently, right? Then I have to like follow the plot, right? Because for me, right, it's like, if somebody's
Follow
sharing
the
something
plot,
with
eh.
you, then it's like, they're sharing their heart with you, right? You should at least try to understand what's going on lah. So I remember I was like, oh, okay, trying to follow the names, who was who and who, what.
So semangat.
So the plot. And then I tell you, when I came home, I was so tired, and then I asked my mom, I'm like, hey, you tired? She said, no. I'm like, how come? She's like, don't have to listen so hard lah. People talking, it doesn't mean like you have to follow the plot from A to Z.
lor. But the thing is,
now
I
I
understand why you actually focus so hard lah. Because you're scared that if you're not focusing, you might appear rude or not attentive or...
Or don't know how to respond,
I
or
think-
ask the right questions.
I always get myself out of the way. If that ever happens, like, hey, by the way, I need to get a drink. Hey, I get you a drink, okay? And then I would just like cut the conversation short or something
Okay
like
lah.
that.
So
because,
to know that you're not the solution, you're not the therapy, you're not the therapist lah.
Correct. Because no point. I mean, if the person is talking, he or she also would like you to listen properly lah. So here am I doing what? It might be actually be, and then she doesn't know how to stop because sorry ma. Okay, might be an option lah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think the other way that I always find like introverts like to go around, help around the house, and it's really their way of coping
Right. Keeping themselves occupied.
and not to appear antisocial.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's also a warm up. It's also a warm up, a way of warming up. Maybe as you gather around the conversation when you're going to get people drinks or whatever, right? They go like, hey, the conversation quite interesting. Then you can like go in and join the conversation. So
Banyak tip ni, banyak
it's
tip.
like, how to say
So kau recce dulu.
yeah, scout the place
Walk
lah.
here, walk there, see what's going on.
Yeah.
And then find where you want to plonk yourself.
Correct. We take time. We are not the one that's go to party like, yeah, let's start. No, we are like, rasa dulu. I think I fit here or somewhere, and then we just make ourselves comfortable lah. So yeah, those are some of my tips for if you are introvert during Chinese New Year gathering. So you can try some of it so that you don't get too uncomfortable.
That's great. And note to remember, just because somebody is quiet, not saying anything,
We
or
are
not,
fairly fine.
yeah, don't feel uncomfortable and don't try and I don't think they're aloof or rude, or I think that's a lot of introverts get very
I think what's
misunderstood
rude is playing your phone when someone is talking to you.
when somebody is talking to you. Okay, so if nobody's talking to you, then you play phone, okay tak?
Depends lah. If you like if you're really comfortable, you look like really comfortable and busy, then okay lah, fine lah,
Okay.
Jangan ganggu orang lain lah. To me, is as long as we don't disturb people, then people just leave us alone. I mean, it really takes a lot of effort to be in a room full of people.
All right, so give people space, and that's totally fine. If there's somebody quiet in the corner, of course lah. If they're like tertinggal, then I think there's this discernment lah.
Yeah,
Pandai-pandai
correct.
sikit lah.
Discernment. So
Yeah.
whether you are introvert or extrovert this Chinese New Year, have a good one at all your banyak-banyak gathering. Jom Sembang Malaysia is hosted by two Malaysian friends who are passionate about Malaysian stuff.
Stay tuned every week for a brand new Sembang session with Juwita Suito and Gina Yap Layong.